Afternoon and welcome to a workshop meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. Today is May 26th, 2021. It is 2 p.m. and I'd like to call this workshop to order. Due to COVID-19, there is no physical meeting location per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Today's meeting will be viewed live via YouTube and replayed on cable channel 10. In addition, the public may call 623-404-9000 and enter the meeting ID number, which is 149-766-1467 to listen to the meeting live. This is for audio only. Public comments are not usually taken at workshops. Council members and city staff are participating via teleconference. Guests are included in staff presentations will be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. So I'd like to ask our city clerk to call the roll today. We have I know that Council Wiesner has let us know that he will be absent, but we do have one action item at the beginning of the agenda. So I'll turn to our city clerk, Julie, to call the roll, please.
Present.
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 Present. Present.
Okay, thank you, Julie. We'll start off then. Our agenda starts off with an action item, Resolution 21-21, establishing the fee for the Whidbey Farmers Market concessionaire agreement. And I believe for this, we have our City Assistant Attorney, Anna Thompson. Welcome, Anna. So I can't hear you, Anna.
There we go.
There you go.
Good afternoon. So since our workshop meeting on the 18th, we've been able to work out a few issues, and we've come to an agreement with the concessionaire agreement signed by the Whidbey Farmers Market in your packet. We also have Resolution 21-21 that explains how we are coming to the monthly agreement, since we don't have the fee in our master fee schedule yet. So I think the agenda item is self-explanatory. We're ready for action. But before I ask for action, I want to make sure to open the floor for any questions or concerns.
Get myself unmuted here. So before we do that, I just want to verify with Julie that we've gotten no input from the public on this item. Okay, we'll turn to council for any questions or motions. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to give my sincere thanks to the committee that met at 3 o'clock that afternoon. You, Mayor, figuring out how to get a very reasonable fee, and for Anna and everyone else on it. The reason there were no questions last time is at council was because I figured we'd talk about it today, and I'm extremely proud of all the work that you did. And I'm sorry if I seemed hot under the collar. I really was. I want to apologize, but I appreciate the work that everyone did. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions or input? So we're hoping for a motion to approve this.
Yes, a motion to approve the agreement and also to approve the resolution. And Councilmember Munns, it was a pleasure to meet with the group. They're going to be amazing. They're pretty great group of folks.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess no one else has raised their hand. I want to move to approve Resolution 21-21, establishing the fee for the Woodby Farmers Market concessionaire agreement and authorizing the mayor to sign the concessionaire agreement.
Second.
So we've got a motion and a second. The motion reads exactly like the recommended motion in our packet. The motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem and second was made by Councilor Heisen. Any other input or questions? Not seeing any. Will the two ayes vote by raising your hand, please? And it looks like we've got 6 that passes unanimously. So I won't ask for any opposed. All 6 have voted positively. So thank you for that. We will now move on and to our second item, our section on our agenda under development services, permit tracking and land management request for proposal update. And I believe for that we have, it looks like we have our Central Services Supervisor, Sandra Place. Sandra, welcome.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can
Okay,
now.
sorry, I'm having some speaker issues today for some reason. Okay, let's get started here. So permit tracking and land management RFP update. So the city issued out an RFP proposal to qualified firms to provide the comprehensive, fully integrated permit tracking and land management software system for the City of Oak Harbor's Development Services Department. We included in the RFP a range of services, as you can see, software installation, conversion, pretty much everything to be able to increase staff productivity while enriching the public experience. The request for proposals were issued on March 22nd, and we received a great number of proposals back, 13, which is one of the biggest ones I've ever seen since I've been doing this. Evaluation team reviewed the proposals. There was 13 staff members in-house, and we had a great suggestion from our finance director to include to include some outside contractors. And we reached out to 3 of them, and 2 of them said that they would love to be part of the process. Only one of them submitted in actual evaluations off of the proposals. So we scored them and we're on the short list phase, which is number 3 there, as you can see. Scheduling the interviews, we just had 1 demonstration yesterday. We had 3 this morning. And so the evaluation team went through those together. And the next piece of the puzzle is to bring forward some procurement options to City Council. We were shooting for June 1st, but it looks like that we're probably not going to make it till the end of June at the workshop, I believe. And David Cool can tell me if I'm not correct on that one. So we just wanted to bring this forward to present this update. And I just realized you probably weren't even seeing my screen, were you?
It's okay, Sandra. I
Oh, you
screen
got
shared.
it. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
having big difficulties right now. I apologize. So anyways, so we're just wanting to update council and make sure that you're aware that we're proceeding with this process and it's going very well.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Not seeing any questions on that, so we'll turn then, go to our next item under development services, zoning code revisions, horizontal mixed use.
Mr. Mayor, I still have additional comments on the permitting system.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're kind of tag teaming it here, Sandra and I today, to
Sorry about that.
bring some more information to you. This is a bit of an update for you on the details of where we are today. On the permitting system, the 4 finalist firms were selected for further review, and 3 of the firms, as Sandra mentioned, performed virtual presentations today. One of the firms presented yesterday. What we're going to do next is do some reference checks, check other agencies that currently use some of these firms to make sure that they're the type of firms that we would like to hire. Some of the criteria we want to evaluate these firms on are, will they be on time? Can they do the project by the first of the year, 2022? Can they do it within budget? As you know, you budgeted $100,000 for us last year. And so we're going to work with whoever is selected to try and hit that target. We're also evaluating these firms based on their ability to do training and do a lot of hands-on training with each of us to make sure that we can operate the system. We want to make sure it's a system that has a lot of technological advances, a lot of things that tie to GIS and other advanced features. We saw a lot of advanced features today. And next time we get together, I'll explain what some of those are. And also the ease of use. We want to make sure it's an easy to use system, not too complicated, so that we get bogged down and it would slow us down if it were too complicated. So we want to make sure that it's easy to use. Some of the strengths of the system we're looking for, most software today can upload photos, application forms and maps, as well as drawings. This will provide a centralized source of information for us. Currently, we don't really have a centralized source. We use a little bit of Eden to help us with issuing permits. We don't have a centralized system to actually capture all the information and make it easily available to all of our customers, to the public, to the staff, and anyone on the outside that wants updated information with the convenience of their telephone. So that's one of the things we hope to gain from our new system. Some of the other benefits we hope to get through this system are better internal and external communication. Internal communication between departments, which is already improving, but also with external customers as well. GIS capability, as I mentioned, so that we can map a lot of the permits that we have, as well as map the inspections on a daily basis. And we hope that the overall process will be quicker with more efficiency. And public records, I think, will be significantly improved. Currently, today, we have a lot of our files in mechanical file systems. And we think with a digital record, we can improve our retrieval and speed of and accuracy of our public records capabilities. And also our historical research on permits. We think that if we can go back in time a few years to 5 years to 10 years and have a historical record electronically, we'll be able to serve our customers much better. So those are some of the things we hope to gain. Next time on June 1st, we had hoped to be in front of you with a contract. We think we'll just postpone that until June 30th. We think we've been going fairly pragmatically and steady, and there's no need to rush this at the very end just to get a contract by June 1st. We want to take our time and check out these firms and make sure we negotiate a good contract. So we're going to take a little more time, and hopefully the start date will be right around July 1st after getting in front of you on June 30th with our contract. And our end game is to get a go live date of January 1st, 2022. So that's where we stand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave and Sandra. Any, looks like we've got Mayor Pro Tem. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just full of questions today. Will this be compatible with other programs that we already have, or this is like wiping out the dinosaurs that we have and doing something new?
Well, I think we're going to be able to use this program with the existing Bluebeam software we are currently using. The Eden financial software will be a little more complex because it's what they call a legacy system. We can make it work, and we'll get through. We would like to probably update some of our other systems over time, and I think there probably would be some good opportunities to do that.
So when you said finance, you can make it work. So when someone is looking where their permit is in the process, they can also see that the city gives them credit for the payment that they have already submitted, because the finance department would be connected with this tracking system.
Well, that's a point of discussion right now. We're trying to figure out ways to make it work. We're going to do a follow-up question with all the vendors that we've talked to see how they could work with Eden. Being a legacy system, currently we're projecting that we'd have to take, if we could take the permit in the permit center, it might be a delay of a day before Eden could actually register it because it is a legacy system. So I'd probably defer to Mr. Goldman to give us a better understanding of how that system
Yeah,
works.
that'll be something that we'd want to ensure that we have integration and compatibility with. Some vendors said they might have to do an upload by the next day, but that's not definitive. That's not conclusive. We still need to do additional follow-up to make sure that we're using as much automation as possible to ensure the two programs talk to each other, so that when someone logs in, they can see that if they did pay by credit card or if they went in and paid at the counter, that it is credited towards their permit.
Okay, and just one more program. You talked about the team in development services. Would the engineers also, or whoever in public work will be part of this? Will they also receive training, I would imagine?
Oh, definitely. Public Works is a big part of the team, and we hope that this will help improve communication and coordination with them. So Public Works, the fire department, finance, administration, we're all part of the same team. And so everyone will get the same training and everyone will be all the same.
Okay, this is great to suddenly be out of the dark ages, so to speak, or at least part way. And hopefully for finance, we'll find the money to change from the Eden to a more compatible system with all the departments. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or input? Okay, then we will move on now then to item number B under development services, zoning code revisions, horizontal mixed use. And for this, I believe we have another, looks like potential tag team between our development services director, Dave Cool, and our planner, associate planner, Ray Lindenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm just going to take this one. It looks like David is either away from his desk right now or something,
Okay.
but I'll go ahead and speak on that. If he wants to comment after the fact, we can certainly do that as well. This is going to be a fairly brief presentation just to do a quick update on where we're at with this process. We've talked about it a lot in the past, so I don't want to beat a dead horse here. And I do want to let you know that we're moving forward with our public engagement process, getting that all kind of laid out as far as timing is concerned, and working with our staff and upstairs to get things out to the public and everything. So we'll be moving on to that very quickly, and also doing some of that paperwork stuff that we have to do with the state Department of Commerce and SEPA and all those sorts of things. So I'm going to start a presentation here, and like I said, I'll go through it fairly quickly. If anybody has any questions or anything, I'm happy to help out with that. So what we have is the horizontal land use and horizontal mixed use and land use matrix process here. We have kind of an overview from the last time around. We talked about how this is a continuation of our work on the Central Business District, that we do allow mixed uses through the Oak Harbor Municipal Code, but only in single buildings. And then we discussed the relationship between the uses in the districts and difficulties in comparing the two because of the formatting, and how we got into this idea of doing a land use matrix instead of the separate categories, zoning categories, having use lists. So from the last meeting, we talked about how this is going to integrate into the code. We're going to have a section of horizontal mixed use standards. Those will actually also include vertical mixed use standards, because we don't have specific standards on that. When we brought in the idea of having the horizontal standards, we decided it'd probably be a good opportunity to set forth some vertical standards as well. We have the land use matrix, and then we have supporting definitions that go along with those. So I put on there originally, I had draft wording for mixed use standards, and I decided to change that a little bit to conceptual wording, because it's still kind of a work in progress here. We're going to be, talking to the attorneys and making sure all of this is legally defensible and all that sort of stuff. So I put in conceptual. And it's still open to, you know, ideas, changes, new concepts, things like that. It's not set in stone by any stretch at this point, but we will be moving the next time around you see it, it will be definitely a draft because it will be essentially ready to insert into the code at that point. What we have here, like I said, the conceptual wording is a purpose statement, similar to many other sections within the code. It talks about how mixed-use zoning allows for mixes of uses within a single development, allowing for additional residential density in areas that are typically strictly for commercial development, and that those areas may function as a downtown core or a node in a larger neighborhood that provides goods and services to residents. That concept of having the mixed uses to allow for, you know, denser neighborhoods, less traffic, you know, more people walking to and from businesses and things like that. Moving on to the actual standards within that section, we have the standards for vertical mixed use. These are essentially based on existing wording that's in the code already. Building height restrictions based on the standards of the CBD sub-districts. Design criteria focusing on the requirements of the design regulations and guidelines, the DRG document. Landscaping required in places that don't have buildings covering them. The central business district kind of anticipates that a lot of these properties and projects would be 100% building. And so there wouldn't necessarily be landscape requirements, though landscaping would be required where there isn't building or other hardscape. Vertical mixed use is being required along Southeast Pioneer Way, having those active facades that we previously introduced into the code with that last round of the central business district changes. Commercial spaces on the ground floor, just as we talked about previously. And then when you have multiple street frontages, you can do dwelling units on ground level on frontages that aren't Pioneer Way. Again, that comes straight out of our code right now. We allow for, if you have multiple street frontages, we allow for residential units to be on some of those side streets or back streets, if you will, like Bayshore and Fidalgo and those. And then no residential uses are permitted north of the adopted alignment of Northeast 16th Avenue. Don't anticipate that that's going to be an issue, but we want to put it in there and make sure all of our bases are covered so that we're still focusing on that agreement with the Navy with regard to residential encroachment. Then the new section, the horizontal mixed use, talks about building height restrictions being based on the underlying zone district. So if the underlying zone that we're talking about is 35 feet, then we would focus on that as being a requirement also if you have a horizontal mixed use project. We talked about exterior design with the previous one. Same thing here. We're going to be focusing on the design regulations and guidelines document to help regulate those aesthetic choices that people make. Landscaping meeting the standards of 1944, OHMC 1944. Again, kind of a standard thing. We want to make sure that the landscaping on these is appropriate for the site. But the key thing that we included here and kind of the big deal is that any undeveloped areas shall be treated to prevent dust erosion and other negative impacts, but also if a street frontage is left to be undeveloped as part of a subsequent phase. So in other words, if somebody develops essentially what we consider the back half of a property, the area further away from the street, then that street frontage still needs to be landscaped appropriately so we don't have a big weed patch sitting in front of a residential project that, you know, may be waiting 1, 2, 5, 10 years, however long, to have that commercial component built. And so we want to make sure that we're avoiding the situation where we have, you know, weedy areas or, you know, trash blowing around, things like that. We want to make sure that these projects are still attractive and look like they are, you know, completely thought out projects, not just kind of halfway done or, you know, zombie projects, if you will. So that was kind of a key part of that we wanted to include in there. Separate designated parking shall be provided for residences on site. We don't want to have parking battles within these projects. We want to make sure that residential units have their parking and then the commercial is separated from that in some way. We'll have standards for easements. That's just kind of a placeholder in there, but we're going to include it in there. And again, that adopted alignment of Northeast 16th Avenue will be respected by this specific standard within the code as well. So moving on to the second aspect of these changes is the land use matrix, and we're overhauling the presentation of the regulations. The idea here is not to make huge wholesale changes to the code or where things are allowed or what's allowed. We are just doing this as a means by which we can present the information in a more efficient and user-friendly manner. So what we did is we went from, this big long list. I talked about this in the previous meeting, about 250 different land use categories down to 85 or so. And hopefully that will allow things to be presented in a way that maybe on 2 pages that, a potential developer or property owner can look at and say, yes, this is allowed on my property, or no, it's not, and just go through this list and not have to flip back and forth. Well, what if I rezone to this? Would I be able to do this? And it also makes it a lot easier for future changes to the code. If we want to allow for a particular use in a different zone district, we can look and see if it's similar to another zone district, see if it makes sense, number one. And number two, when we make that change, we can just put it in one of those cells on the matrix. And we feel like that makes things a lot more user-friendly for everybody involved. So we're still rooted in the horizontal mixed use discussion. We're figuring out what the relationships between the zone districts and the uses within them are. And so that's what happens when we're able to compare all the zone districts together. It makes things easier from an administration standpoint. And when we want to look at, making changes to the zoning code and to our comprehensive plan and all these sorts of things, that we have these all together in one spot. Now we have 3 pages on here. I'd like to get it down to 2, but I'm not married to that idea. If we need to provide that information on 3 pages, we will do that. But it just makes it a lot easier if we can get it down to those 2 pages so we can look at them side by side and say, look, this is what's allowed in this zone district. It makes sense to allow it in this other zone district because they are very similar to each other. So rather than having to flip back and forth between pages, see uses that are very similar to each other, but not exactly the same, we've tried to condense it down into a much more user-friendly and palatable way of reviewing that information. So we talked about the zone district relationships, allowing horizontal mixed uses only in certain zone districts. I did want to point out that the materials that you got had a typo in them. We had the horizontal mixed use allowed in the C1, C3, and C5. What we were intending was for it to be C3, C5, and RO instead. So that there are a little bit of that kind of thing going on there. We want to make sure before we get this out to the public and get this into a final draft form that we have all of those kind of little quibbles figured out, polished out, so we don't have to go back and tell people, wait a minute, we didn't mean that. So that's where we're at on that. And as you can see, there's the difference between the horizontal and vertical mixed use. We're still allowing that vertical mixed use in every place that it's allowed right now. We're just adding the concept of the horizontal mixed use in a couple of specific locations where we feel like it makes sense. One of those locations is not Pioneer Way in the Central Business District. So that hopefully will alleviate some concerns on that. But we do feel like it is a good idea perhaps to have it available as an option in other places. And finally, we have supporting definitions. And as I mentioned previously, there were a whole bunch of very similar, but not exactly the same uses that were listed in different zone districts. And so one of the key things here was to get those consolidated and defined. So we don't have situations where we're trying to make interpretations on what was meant by is or what was meant by a slightly different phrasing of something in one zone district to the next. We're going to define those, we're going to have them in there. So we got a bunch of new definitions and a few revised definitions, and a couple of those revised ones were ones that we put in last time with that Central Business District review, but we're going to make some minor changes as we see how they kind of work. And that's part of, doing our job here is to make sure things work and ensure that it's going to be doing what we expect it and what we want it to do. So moving on, our future steps here, as I mentioned, we're going to be moving forward pretty quickly here with the final draft and things like that. We have our conceptual language that we presented to the Planning Commission yesterday and to the City Council today. We're going to be doing a finalized draft for Public Planning Commission and City Council review coming up very soon. We're going to be inserting these sections that I've discussed today. We're also going to be deleting sections that we no longer need. And specifically, I'm referring to the use lists that are in each zone district. So we're going to go through all of our zone districts. We're going to strip out those permitted and accessory permitted and conditional use lists because they're all provided now in the matrix. And so we feel like it makes a lot of sense to remove that potentially contradictory and superfluous information out of there. We'll be working on SEPA and Department of Commerce review to get those processes started as well, so we can kind of all come to the finish line at about the same time. And then we'll be scheduling a virtual open house with a solicitation of comments from both our elected officials, our appointed officials, and the general public at large. And then we'll have a final draft ordinance adoption. Hopefully that'll be happening towards the end of the summer. So that is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ray. Question from Councilor Servadius.
Just a comment, just as always, Ray, wanted to say thank you for how much you can distill down a tremendous amount of information and then present it with a lot of clarity. So keep up the good work. I know it matters, you know, in simplifying this stuff to a lot of people, but as always, a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Servadius. Anyone else? Looks like you covered it really well. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Oh, oops, wait a minute. Okay, thumbs up from Councilor Eisen. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to our next section, which is Public Works. Item number A, security camera request for proposal update. And I believe for that, we have our Central Services Supervisor, Sandra Place again. Sandra, welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council members, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So this is another RFP that we've been working on for the security cameras. They're capital projects. So we actually put the RFP out for companies that were interested in securing our camera system with software licensing and configurations for 13 designated sites. I just listed the sites out here, and each one of these have a capital projects in the budget. The requests for proposals were issued on March 13th, 2021. We had a mandatory walk around with all of the interested vendors so they could actually see the sites, know what they were getting themselves into, because we have a variety of, some have electrical, some do not, some have line of sight, some do not. So we wanted to make sure that they knew exactly what was happening. We had one interesting situation due to COVID that a vendor asked to do a virtual walk around. So we did videotape all of the walk around and sent it to them. So we helped them out on that request. We received 4 proposals on May 3rd. We put together an evaluation team of 6 staff members, and we went through all of the proposals as well as sat down and had a discussion about which one we would like to begin negotiations with. So the next step is that we're going to meet with the vendor and figure out exactly what was the proposal, because there are some issues with some of them came over the budgeted amounts, but we also don't know if it's based on hardware or installation. So we're going to get down to the nitty gritty now. And then we hope to bring this back to City Council on July 13th with the procurement options for this particular purchase for all these capital projects. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, looks like we're no questions on that. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Mayor.
We will then move on to the next area, which is B, ordinance number 1928, Island Disposal Franchise Extension, Operations Manager Steve Beebe.
Bear with me just for a second. Okay, so in 2011, the franchise agreement with Island Disposal in the city of Oak Harbor to allow Island Disposal will be up. It was a 10-year agreement, And within in-house discussions, we decided that we were going to go ahead and we were going to let Island Disposals continue on with the picking up NAS would be Island Seaplane Base with this contract. It's an extension of 18 months. Next slide, please. Oops. The contract expires on January 2029. Per RCW, the franchise agreements are to be heard twice before council action is taken. This proposed extension allows staff time to explore all options. And when we say all options is that because the seaplane base is considered in city limits, we do actually have the rights to pick up solid waste on the base if we chose to do so. We haven't done that just mostly because of capital costs. In the past, the city did not want to purchase more garbage trucks, hire employees, and those sort of things. And so what this extension does is it allows us to relook at this contract, re-explore some things to whether or not we want to provide that service. But I'm pretty confident that we're just going to keep things just the way they are because it works pretty well. We get 6.5% utility tax on them doing it, and we don't have to have the capital to do that. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So when this first started, I was so surprised that we had to give them a 10-year notice that we would be taking over picking up the garbage. And that was back in 2011, that it had to be 10 years. And I was told it's because they had invested in trucks and stuff. And anyway, they would know how to plan their equipment and business and people. So this new extension, will it also go for 10 years? Or is it something every year we're going to have to look at?
Well, actually, I think you're a little confused on the type of contracts that we deal with. When we do annexations from within the county to the city, that's where the 10-year moratorium kind of comes into place. That one there is a whole different than this Navy-based contract extension. So the 10-year contract, let's say, when someplace out there on the end of Fort Nugent comes into the city limits, what we're doing is we're taking business away from them, and they need 10 years to recover from that, taking that business away from them. This Navy-based contract is totally different. We could have taken when the Navy went private to privatization, it was several years ago. We could have taken it over then because Island Disposal never had the rights to the Navy base, but we allowed them to do it because we did not want to invest in the capital to pick up the solid waste, recycling, and all that is out on the seaplane base.
Thank you, Mr. Beebe. I appreciate that.
Any other questions?
Mayor, if I might just chime in too. One of the things we realized there was a possible timing issue. And so that's why we put it on your workshop agenda as an add-on. State law doesn't allow you to act on a franchise on the first date that it's introduced. So we wanted to introduce this today so that you could take action at your next regular council meeting. Since we only have one in June, we would only have the opportunity to take action at your June 1st meeting. So that's why that was added on to your agenda today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weed. Seeing no other questions then, We'll move on to our next section, which is engineering. Looks like we've got three items. We'll start with item A, which is the Northeast 7th Avenue Reconstruction Project update. And we have our city engineer, Alex Warner. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I have a project update for you today on this Northeast 7th Avenue reconstruction. So the first slide here is new. This was some added clarification we got from our IRTPO group this week. So the city of Oak Harbor has funded the surface transportation block grant. The funding source is the STPG grant for the Northeast 7th project. We are not at risk of losing this funding. The IRTPO itself has not lost any STPG funding. It's not currently at risk of losing this funding. There are some highway improvement program funds that could be used for the entire county. It's $105,000 of that funding must be spent in an urban area. We don't currently have a project that can take on those funds at this time. So the Island Regional Transportation Planning Organization is coordinating with their potential project partners to fund a project by this September to use that $105,000. So this project is going to improve Northeast 7th Avenue from Oak Harbor Road to SR 20. Currently, it's a narrow 2-lane road. It lacks sidewalks, bicycle connections, street lighting, and it has open ditches for stormwater. So we're looking to add continuous sidewalks, bicycle facilities, street lighting, and enclosed storm drainage. There was an initial effort to fund this project about 10 years ago through the IRTPO. It was a different funding source. The project was awarded $850,000 in 2010, $300,000 in 2011, and $250,000 in 2012. It was a similar grant funding that covers 86.5% of the cost, and the city is responsible for 13.5% of the remaining cost. And in 2013, the project could have progressed to preliminary engineering, but it did not due to lack of a local funding match. So the current efforts to fund this project, and again, in our 2016 Transportation Comprehensive Plan, the public identified Northeast 7th Avenue reconstruction as their #1 priority street project. So we started a new effort to fund the project through the IRTPO, and that's the funding we currently have in place. In 2016, we were awarded $782,200. 2018, another $188,600. So in 2019, City Council authorized a project to progress the preliminary engineering with the local funding match now in place. Last year, we sent out an RFQ seeking engineering services. We received 7 consultant team proposals. Trantech Engineering was determined to be the most qualified to provide the work. In January of this year, City Council authorized the mayor to sign a contract with Trantech, the amount of $470,250 plus a 10% management reserve fund. The Trantech began their work in February 2021 with a data collection effort that included a wetlands investigation, geotechnical investigation, surveying and right-of-way determination, and traffic data collection. So this was completed in April, and they're now producing reports summarizing this data. And they are now beginning the preliminary design, conceptual design. It's moving to 30%. And as part of that 30% design, I'll bring 2 concepts to council at a workshop meeting this summer to discuss. So that's where we currently are with this project. I can take any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Nice job. Got a hand raised, Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. Mr. Warner, I'm looking at, in our packet, it's page 139. It's the funding that we secured 2010 through 2012 and then the current years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming we gave back those amounts because we weren't able to progress in 2013. So the two totals that you showed for 2016 and 2018, page 140 of our packet, do we have that total available? 900-ish thousand, a little over, close to $1 million, I guess.
Yes, I believe is with the funds that are awarded, you have to initiate utilization of those within a certain amount of time, and that time is elapsed for the initial funding effort. So the funding of 2016 and 2018 is in place, and that is where we obligate the funds for the 3 phases of the project. There's preliminary engineering, right of way, and then construction. So we've obligated.
And you've probably given us some numbers. I just don't recall it. Do we have then an engineer's estimate for the whole project?
I have that included here. There was an initial estimate.
And that's okay. If you don't have it on you, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I was just curious if it was in here and I missed it.
No, it's not. It's not in this packet, but there is an initial estimate as part of the grant application paperwork.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Input? Okay. Again, thank you, Alex. We'll go on to item B, which is 2021 TBD project, annual overlay project update. Again, city engineer, Alex Warner. Alex?
Thanks again. So this one is a quick update. We had the mayor authorize an interagency agreement with Island County to provide the services for the 2021 TBD and 2021 street overlay project in February. This was a not to exceed agreement, $1,132,000 or $132,289. This was based on an estimate of $577,757 for the TBD work, $480,457 for the 2021 street overlay work. And this also included a 7% contingency. So the work that will be completed this summer, the red streets shown are funded by the Transportation Benefit District. The green are the annual arterial overlays. So on May 6th, Island County had a bid opening, and bid results are as follows. The low bid was Craig Construction, and for the portion of the work that is within Oak Harbor for TBD and overlay work, it's $530,158, which is considerably under what we had estimated. We've got good asphalt prices on this. So the amount of work for the TBD comes to $222,213, and for the annual streets overlays, $307,945. They're anticipating coming to Oak Harbor in August to complete this work. And we're currently looking at adding additional streets, especially for the TBD money, the local streets. We see an opportunity here to take advantage of the lower costs and do some additional overlays as part of that TBD program. That will require submitting a change order request through Island County to their contractor, Craig Construction. So I can take any questions on this one as well.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I didn't see who was up there first, so I'm going to go with Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a deadline on when to submit those additional streets? I know that they want to get started. They were mentioning it, Bill Oakes, at the IRTPO meeting today. Is there a deadline of which you have to let them know for the additional ones?
I don't know the specific deadline. I do know that we could not ask prior to them having an executed contract with the contractor, which I believe was just recently accomplished. So we're going to be submitting that request as soon as we can. to get the input back from Island County if that additional work can be taken on.
Thank you. Excellent.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you for that update. And I'm glad you ended with saying we're looking at including some more streets. I think that's 2 years in a row that we've come in under estimates. And I think a large part of that is due to the asphalt prices. So that's great news. I know you're new to taking on this role, Alex, but if you could, at some point, doesn't have to be right now, give us an update. I know when we originally laid this whole TBD out, we were tracking an 8 to 10 year plan, if all went well and funding came in as we expected, to resurface all of the streets in Oak Harbor, which I think is a pretty impressive goal. It's a great success story for the city. So I'm just curious, I know you've got a lot going on and you guys are kind of short some bodies, but at some point, if you could give us an update in general, overall, if we're still tracking, or I don't know if that's Mr. Lefevre could help you out with that. I know he's been involved. Just how that's tracking overall. I think it's just a very exciting success story for the city. Thank you.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay. Seeing no other hands up, we'll go on to the next item and last item under engineering. And that is Harbor Heights project update. And for that, we've got our communications and IT manager, Sabrina Combs. Welcome, Sabrina.
So I think that might have been an error. Sorry, that update's being given by Alex.
You know, Alex was smiling there, I noticed. And so,
and it's under engineering, so I'm a little bit confused.
yeah,
Sorry.
I was wondering if that was a last minute change.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry, Mayor.
Alex, bring it back to you.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure Sabrina will jump in where needed. So this is the Harbor Heights Sports Complex project update. I know there were a number of questions at the last council meeting, so I hope we can answer those here today. So previously, Council adopted a resolution April 6, 2021, selecting the Master Plan Concept 2, Phase 1 for creation of the Harbor Heights Sports Complex. Then at the April 20th council meeting, there was a resolution designating the 75 acres as a city park. And this was the master plan that was selected. For phase 1, the master plan showed 2 possible locations. And one of them used a gun club road access. And this is a county-owned road that requires the coordination with Island County. And at the time, we anticipated road widening and increased project costs for offsite improvements. The other option for phase 1's location utilized Northwest Elwha Street as its access. And this would increase traffic impacts to that neighborhood street. The roadway, sidewalk, sewer, and water utilities, however, are stubbed directly to the park property at the end of Elwha Street. We sought community input, and the responses were in favor of Master Plan Concept 2 with street access from Gun Club Road. The Park Board also recommended Master Plan Concept 2 with access from Gun Club Road. So determining the appropriate phase 1 location and access required further information. That included coordination with Island County and a traffic study. So at that time, David Evans was asked to add a traffic study to the master plan phase of their work, analyzing the traffic impacts to Gun Club Road compared to Northwest Elwha Street. And that was at an added cost of $4,000. Gibson Traffic Consultants, as a sub-consultant to DEA, prepared the access memo. The studied 3 intersections, North Oak Harbor Road at Northwest and Northwest Crosby Avenue, Northwest Elwha Street at Northwest Crosby, and North Oak Harbor Road at Gun Club Road. and it reviewed these two access options to determine what they recommended. Their analysis included collision analysis, trip generation, trip distribution, and a level of service analysis. So here's the trip generation summary. This is based on the standard Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, the 10th generation. So what this shows you is the expected amount of trips per field during the rush hour AM peak time and the rush hour PM peak time. This access memo prepared did not include a direct analysis of the weekend impacts on the trip generation. The results of the study showed that the level of service does not change with either access option at these three intersections. You can see here the future conditions with LWAT access are the same as future conditions with gun club access. So according to this, the traffic impacts do not prefer one connection over the other. There's no collision history that was found that would lead to one access being better than the other. Though the existing pedestrian improvements are superior at Northwest Elwha Street, including the sidewalk being present to the park and wider roads. So Gibson Traffic's report recommended Elwha Street as a preferred access, mainly due to these existing pedestrian improvements. The other piece of this was the coordination with Island County, and we met with their staff on April 28th. And what we learned from that meeting is Gun Club Road would need to be widened to 30 feet. That would be 2 11-foot lanes and 2 4-foot shoulders. The current roadway width of Gun Club Road is 24 feet wide from Oak Harbor Road to the gate, to the gate for our water tower. And then it narrows down to 14 feet wide from the gate to the Harbor Heights property itself. The length of this roadway improvement is about 1,900 feet long. And then initial cost estimate internal here is $200,000 for this roadway widening. Additionally, we'll have to further research the right-of-way impacts if there would be any right-of-way required. The permitting with Island County would include access and right-of-way permits. It's typically a three-week review, though they did say the complexity of the application may increase the review time. There is also a possibility that Gun Club Road could be annexed into the city, though this does require further discussion and research. We have an annexation in progress at the end, the eastern side of Gun Club Road. That was a good annexation, but again, that will require some additional research if that's something we could pursue. So based on the new information gathered from Gibson's traffic report and the communication with Island County regarding the improvements at Gun Club Road, staff determined Northwest Elwha Street as a favored access for Harbor Heights Phase 1. On May 14th, 2021, Mayor sent a memo to City Council informing them of this plan. Additionally, there was a funding opportunity recently that staff did not want to miss. This was a House Transportation Infrastructure member designated projects. It's a type of earmarking. So submitting for this funding required a cost estimate for the full build out of the park. And we were given 7 days notice to submit the funding package, or sorry, the application for the funding. So since we did not want to miss this opportunity, we directed DEA to provide a high level cost estimate as part of the master plan, the cost of $2,500. So here was the results of their full build out cost estimate for the entirety of the master plan, the full 75 acres. With a 30% contingency, it comes out to $60,709,988. A sizable amount of that is the site and civil work, and that is a result of building these fields on a sloping site. Additionally, there are some street improvements that are included in this cost estimate. I know there was a lot of information, but I'm here to answer questions you may have.
First off is Councillor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that I understood this correctly, because it's my understanding, based on the overall view of the project, is that eventually there will be an access point on Gun Club and an access point on Elwha. The one or the other decision that's kind of before us now is just which access we're going to start with. Is that correct? Because eventually we will have to widen the road on Elwha or on Gun Club to get in, and there will be access on Elwha. So that will happen. It was just a matter of which road we decide to use first. I want to make sure I'm right.
Yes, that is correct. We have, as part of the phase 1, 2 soccer fields and 50 parking spaces required to deliver. And part of that is, choosing one access point for this phase 1. Ultimately, we will have 4 access points: Gun Club Road, Elwha, Kathleen Drive, and then Northeast 16th Avenue. That's at the southern boundary of on the park property. Our comprehensive plan shows that we need to extend that to Heller Road and over to Oak Harbor Road.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. There seemed to be some confusion last time about one or the other, and I was like, I thought we were eventually going to have them all over the place anyway. So on that note, because of the acquisition involved and the widening improvements and right-of-way work that's going to have to be done to get access on Gun Club, is the preference right now based on the time that it would take to be able to obtain access through Gun Club? Are we on a time crunch, or is this a financial crunch, or both?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We do have time constraints with the grant funding. We need to deliver this project in its entirety for phase 1 by December 31st of 2022. Taking into account project closeout and construction, we need to have a completed design for phase 1 by November of this year and go to construction spring of 2022, with construction to be completed in the summer.
Okay, so if we aren't able to get right-of-way acquisition and the widening and everything done on Gun Club that we need to be able to use that road in time, then that would jeopardize our funding?
That's my understanding. I don't have a good feel on how flexible any of those deadlines are. Sabrina, do you have?
I do not. I would say, just from the history, so that everybody's aware, this is a project that Alex and I have come into when somebody else was running the project and we were taking it over. The grant does have strict requirements. Our understanding is we do have to close out by December of 2022, and construction would take place between February and August. And there's not a lot of wiggle room with the weather here for the construction. So the conversations that staff have had in the past with the grant providers is that is the deadline. So that has been the concern. So the cost, the deadline for the grants and being able to close us out, as Alex said. And then the other thought process was, we don't have some of the pedestrian safety features on Gun Club Road in the first phase that are already existing with Elwha. And then the other thing is that Our hope was if there was some cost savings potentially with going from Elwha, that we might be able to add additional parking spaces. Because right now, when you look at this drawing, I think what's confusing to people is you think there's more parking coming than is coming in the first phase. The first phase is only 50 parking spaces, and these are of course design drawings. So 50 parking spaces is all that's coming in the current phase. So our hope was if we had some cost savings with going through Elwha, then we might potentially be able to provide some additional spaces. So I hope that answers all those questions.
It does. Thank you. I was certainly on board with the access on Gun Club Road for phase one for all of the obvious reasons, but it seems like there are equally good reasons to kind of pivot and start with Elwha if that's gonna if using the other access is going to jeopardize getting the whole thing off the ground. So I see lots of hands up, so I'll yield to my peers, but thank you. Yeah, you answered all of my questions. I appreciate it.
We'll go to Councillor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Warner, tell me the difference between a traffic study versus a traffic report. It appears we have a traffic report. We're trying to get funding for a traffic study. Is that correct?
Sorry, I don't.
And your mic is really low. If there's any way you can get a little closer, please.
Sorry, I don't quite understand the question regarding the funding.
So it sounds like what we're referencing a traffic report. Is a traffic report a little more preliminary and different than a traffic study? Because we were asked at our last council meeting to approve money for a more comprehensive traffic study to compare Elwha versus Gun Club Road. Is there a difference between a traffic report and a traffic study?
No, I'm using those interchangeably. I'm sorry. No, those are the same.
Okay. And so the traffic report that we got said that there was no differential in the collision history, no differential in the traffic impacts. It didn't favor one entrance or the other. And specifically, there was no weekend analysis. When do we anticipate these? It's a rhetorical question. We anticipate these parks will be used on the weekend. So it seems like that weekend information, that weekend analysis would have been important. What was favored was the pedestrian access of Elwha because there are sidewalks there already. I've got some really strong feelings on this, and I'll just lay them out there. I don't see anything that precludes us from coming in on Gun Club Road. Yes, ideally we want to widen it, but is there anything that stops us from coming in there? It's basically as wide as Elwha is. And if any of my peers have not driven over to Elwha and looked at where this entrance is going, you need to do that. It's a very narrow street. There's cars allowed to park on the west side of the street. There's no parking signs up on the east side, but people still park there. There were cars parked there when I went there. I don't know who would enforce that. And the way I look at it is you just presented an estimate of a $60 million price tag for this master plan. I don't know when we're going to come up with the rest of the funding to do this park. But it seems like there's nothing that precludes coming in on Gun Club Road. And I'm looking at the display up on our screen. If we came in there, and Mrs. Combs is right, there's only 50 parking spots. I'm enlarging my screen. If you zoom in, it looks like each one of those bump outs is about 6 parking spots. So, and then there's 7 bump outs. So that's approximately 42 spaces on that pink line right there. So what that tells me is we don't have a lot of parking planned. We have parking planned. We don't have a lot of parking funded. So we need to plan for some overflow parking, even if it's just a gravel parking lot. And while that could occur down by Elwha, if it doesn't occur for some reason, where are those people going to park? Are they going to overflow out onto Elwha Street? And if you haven't been there, you need to drive over there and look at that. So once again, I see nothing that precludes us from coming in on Gun Club Road and starting this project while we work on the permitting, the annexation, the acquisition from Island County of some extra lane width. I don't know why Island County wouldn't support us. you know, as I think Councilmember Wassinger said, a lot of our participants and people that use these fields are coming from outside the city limits. So to me, that's just the obvious solution. I don't want to pop through on Elwha, although yes, there's always been planned ingress and egress for this whole park. I don't want that to be the main entrance for the next 3 to 5 years or however long it takes to come up with funding to do the rest of this. So once again, we come in on Gun Club. Actually, we could cut a trail through there too. If you want pedestrian access, do a cool little trail. That trail would have to be the length of approximately a soccer field, and kids could ride their bikes. They could walk. You still have all the same pedestrian access available that they could just walk the length of a soccer field, and then they're there at the soccer field, or they could drive in from the north on Gun Club Road. We put in 50 spaces. We have a big gravel overflow area while we wait for the rest of the project to develop and we secure funding. But I just see there's a lot of marketing, for lack of a better word, that went into the presentation. And this is not against staff or anyone. It's just a lot of marketing that went into Elwha as a favored access point. And yet, like so many of the decisions we have to make as council, you got to go boots on the ground and go over there and sit there and look at the situation. And to me, there's just nothing about that right now that makes sense as far as having Elwha as the primary first entrance. Yes, it's an ingress, egress, and some overflow access eventually, but no way can I support starting with that. That's why the council accepted a grant. That's why the council went through all these steps. That's why the council drafted a resolution. And so I really, it still sits quite sideways with me to get a memo saying that after we did all of that work, went through the legislative process of drafting a resolution, that staff was directed a different way. So I'll pause at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. It takes a minute to check everything off. I love the idea of the gravel overflow parking lot because you're going to need it. My husband and I drove the two roads middle of the day and at night. And on Ewa, almost the whole left side as you're going would be going towards the park is their extra parking from their units of where they live. There's one street on the right that is a one-way only that comes out. During the day, there was one car parked just after, there's many signs that say no parking. It's red lettering with white. And there was one car, and then at night there were 3 cars at 10:30. We went at 10:30 at night and about 2:30 in the afternoon. If they're counting on Elwha to be that extra parking, you are ruining that neighborhood. I'm sorry. I think the idea that kids could ride their bike, yes, the utilities are there, but you make a path, you're going to have to cut down the trees anyway. And I would assume you would harvest them all at once and use that money to improve the park. I'm not sure, but you're going to have to, I mean, the trees are right there on the other side of that blocked street. But you could make a path, but if you need 50 parking spots exactly to accept the grant, which I believe is what I read, the bottom lot doesn't even look like it comes close to that space to have 50. The other one does. And there's no road to go from one parking lot to the other if you were able to put 2 in. So it's whichever area is planned to have in the design, the at least minimum of 50 parking spots. The other thing I see on here, which is a good idea, is a bus stop. Has someone checked with Island Transit, one, to see if it's on if that street and that location would be on their route? How often do they run? Is it a feasible schedule to go along with games and practices and stuff? You know, are they putting in the little house thing for the bus stop, or are we having to do that? So I want to be sure staff checks with Island Transit, or there's no use putting in a bus stop if it's not going to be on their route. I think I believe Ms. Wassinger can say, you can get a list from the soccer league and find out how many kids live in the county and how many live in the city. And they should have as much interest providing this for their children, supposedly where they live, than us. I'm sorry, I think we've got to go gun club for the first entrance, for the first main one, and do a path into the bottom part of the soccer field for the second one. I understand we're on a time limit, but it's going to take time to harvest all those trees. I mean, geez. I don't know. Thank you. That's all I have at this time.
Councilor Mack?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Alex Warner, for all the updates and the presentation. And as for Councilman Servadius, yes, I drove those roads. And as I stated last time, I'm very reluctant to approve going through a residential neighborhood at this time for a large development. But Mr. Warner, I'm sort of perplexed here. We have this project that is going to benefit the entire North Whidbey Island here with youth and bringing possible future events to this to the city. And are our commissioners on board with this? I'm surprised that we're not even having any of those our representatives speaking for us, because they should be a large part of this when it comes not only to Oak Harbor Road, but Gun Club Road as well. And as I said last time, that there's going to be larger amounts of people as years go by showing up with population increases. It's imperative that we not only use Gun Club Road to facilitate all the traffic as quickly as possible. Yes, I understand the schedules and constraints and funding and all that. But part of this whole thing should be, I didn't pace it off, but it's approximately a half mile from where the bike path stopped at Crosby, a little bit north of that, and it needs to make its way all the way out to Gun Club Road. So our commissioners need to be a bigger part of this and to help us plan for the future, because that is a county road. Because we're going to need bike paths out there, and then down on the main intersection, there's going to need to be a spot for Island Transit to pick people up and drop them off, and they can walk up Gun Club Road, or they can walk down, or the bus can come up there if we're all wide enough. So, you know, I understand a lot of those things, but again, I'm having a difficult time with the county not helping out and getting more involved in this, and then again pushing this through LWA. You're going to have this overflow, and as I'm for the even if we doze off an area and it's graveled, we've got to have overflow parking for a lot of that. So and then of course on page 230, not to put you on the spot, Mr. Warner, but the traffic study, they used the word identified LWA. They didn't use the word recommend LWA. So as council, I'm having a tough time proving that. I would like to see more activity and more action using Oak Harbor Road, and then Gun Club, which comes out right in the center of the park, and that type of thing. So let's see if we can get some more of our commissioners to step up and help us out with this project that benefits everybody. And it's a good project for them to get involved in. It's a good, clean, healthy project. The athletics is one of the fundamentals of raising a good child and a family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mack. Back to Councilor Servadius.
Mr. Warner, would you touch base again on the timelines? I know there was a year-end 21 timeline and then something about 22. What were those timelines again?
Yeah, the grant deadline is December 31st, 2022 for us to have delivered what's required.
Okay. And so even if we build fields in 20, I don't think we can get them built this year because we have to log it. So let's say we're building fields in 2022. How long does it take a field to mature before it can be played on? I'm assuming these will be sod or seeded. We don't have the money for AstroTurf.
Yeah, if we have any park staff, they might have a better idea of that. I don't have.
Yeah, this is Don Crawford, the parks manager. Depending upon soil prep and all of that kind of thing, it can take as much as about 8 to 12 weeks. Up here with our predominant gunmetal gray skies for a good part of the year, that does prolong things. So typically when I'm going in to reseed an entire field, I give it a good portion of the summer, just because even if it's green on top, it won't have the root structure to sustain, heavy play.
Mr. Crawford, welcome. We have not met. I guess we have a new parks director. I didn't know that. So I know when we did the first phase 1 of the improvements for Windjammer, it was at least a season before Mr. Needham would let anybody on that grass. And so I guess what I'm looking at is, if we need some widening and we're concerned about pedestrian access, it sounds like we have 24 months-ish, kind of at a minimum, to sort that out. And once again, I don't see how that precludes us from coming in off Gun Club Road tomorrow to start construction of these fields and 50 parking spaces. Eventually, yes, if utilities are on LWA, as that gets further developed, I could see we bring in utilities. Right now, I don't think in any of this first, whatever we're calling this first phase 1, there's any utilities or restrooms planned outside of porta potties. Eventually there will be. So once again, just logically, especially if we have to have big trucks and equipment going in and out to log that, makes sense that they would go out of the less traveled and less populated road, which is currently Gun Club Road. So, once again, if we built these in the summer of 2022, I don't see them getting played on until the summer of 2023, unless we paid for turf and actually installed turf versus seeding. So, unless somebody can convince me otherwise, I'd like to stay focused with the plan that we originally had, which is Gun Club Road. And Mayor, if you need another resolution or another motion, I'm happy to make that.
So the couple of comments that were made about the relationship with the county, obviously there is a difference between these two accesses on what we own or what we don't own. And the permitting process from the county might be helpful, Alex. If you go over that one more time, did you say that what we're going to be required to get from Island County for permits?
Yeah, it was access and a right-of-way permit, and they said it's about a 3-week review time, but with the complexity of the project, it may take a bit more time.
Okay, so and it feels like that if council would like us to go that direction and go only that direction, then that's what we'll plan to do. I haven't even talked to staff about this, but it feels like that's what you want. And then there, my relationship with the county commissioners, Mr. Mack, is okay as far as I'm concerned. Don't know that I'll get any special privileges that any other city would or wouldn't. It does make a difference, probably for council to communicate with our commissioners. Also, that certainly would not hurt. But if that's what council feels, and it feels like there are 3 and probably 4 or 5 that feel that way, then that's the direction that we'll plan to go. And if staff feels differently, I guess you should speak up now.
The only thing I just wanted to speak up about, I hear the direction council's giving us is the gravel walkway and the trail. I just want to make sure, or the gravel parking lot, I want to make sure, based on conversations we've had internally with development services and permitting, that those things are allowed and feasible. So that's something we need to talk about more, just from an internal conversation perspective. That's the only thing I wanted to consider with a little more detail in the future.
Okay, I see we've got a couple of the other counselors who have not weighed in, so let's go to Counselor Wassinger.
Hey, thank you. Yes, I agree with Councilmember Servadius. I would like to see us work here to communicate with the county, to start that process, to really seriously look at using gun club. That would be my preference, especially during the construction of this, instead of going through that neighborhood. And it is what we planned. So if anything, I would like to just at least get that conversation going and some serious dates, timelines, like what it would take to start using that road, and what the county needs and what they can do to get that process started. That's the direction that I would like to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Goebel.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one question and then I have a comment, but I was curious if we have been communicating with the school district about the potential of the school getting built at Fort Nugent. Is there a timeline that, there's so many local, programs. There's a Northwest Soccer League. There's, youth football that use Fort Nugent, that rely on that space. And there's lots of other things that rely on that space as well. And so I was curious if there's a deadline that we have to kind of have. I guess not necessarily the city has to vacate that property, but those clubs and organizations also need to kind of plan ahead. And so I was curious, do you know if there's been a conversation about when they expect to break ground in that area?
Mr. Oborn, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I can answer that. We just had discussions, if you remember, with renewing the agreement. The 10-year agreement with Nugent was expired, and they extended it through February of 2023. And then it's on a month-to-month lease after that. So we're good for the 2022 season. But assuming the bond passes this February, then there's a good opportunity that they'll probably do the planning in 2022 and go into construction in 2023. We'll lose at least 2 soccer fields. So that's the key. That's the other component here. We have the funding that's through 2022, but we also need to make sure we coordinate and have the additional fields on there so that we can move soccer that's currently at Fort Nugent and move it to Harbor Heights. So that's a good question. And we've had coordinated with them, and that's the reason why we're trying to coordinate this grant here so that we don't lose fields without the ability to replace them.
And just to clarify, the staff feels that if we were to have our initial access go through Gun Club Road, that we potentially would lose the funding or not have these soccer fields, or not have, the Harbor Heights project up to an expectation that we could use it. You're afraid that Gun Club will just really deter and slow down that process?
Alex, you want to take that, or I can take it either way?
It would add more complexity to the process. We would be providing additional, required to coordinate further with Highland County to determine those widening improvements, and then constructing the actual offsite improvements will add additional time to the construction phase.
I understand the logic why you'd want to go with LWA, but it's really hard. I'm hearing all of my fellow council members make some really good points. And I feel that we really need to make a strong effort with the county because this, as Councilmember Wassinger said a couple weeks ago, this is going to be a facility that's going to be used by members from the county as well, and really could transform Oak Harbor. I would really like if we could continue looking at, or if we could go back to the original plan of looking at Gun Club Road, and at least just have that conversation with the county and figure out a real timeline. Is this really going to slow the job down like staff possibly anticipates it to? So that's where I'm at right now. But I appreciate everyone, their work on this. I know this is a huge decision we're making. So I appreciate the time and effort from everyone.
Thank you, Councilor Goebel. I think we had, we have got a statement here from Steve Beebe. Are you with us, Steve? You want to talk about the gravel parking lot?
I didn't bring up the gravel parking lot. I don't have anything to add to that. I was going to mention some stuff about the logging that would potentially, I've heard a lot of conversations about the logs up there and thinking that there's some significant value in the logs up there. And, you know, I just wanted to remind council that that property was logged off about 20 years ago. Most of the marketable timber was taken during that time. We do have some alders that are growing there that are marketable, but I don't think it will bring in anywhere near the value that we got off of Sleeper Road. So I don't want us to get into the weeds of thinking that logging this property will bring us some major funds, because I don't believe that it will, because it is mostly scrappy alder up there because it was logged previously. And what I was going to start working on is trying to get a survey get a logger survey and see if we can get an actual estimate of what we have for timber up there.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And I see Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish I'd known about the logging when I have asked in the past if we own the logs. Everybody said, yes, we do. So I didn't realize it had already been logged off. That makes a huge difference in potential income to the city, as Mr. Beebe pointed out, but that wasn't mentioned before. If we develop the LWA, then that means all the construction, the pickup trucks and the dump trucks and all of that's going to come in on that neighborhood. And I just see this turning Gun Club until it's developed. As long as we can use it, you can still start bringing in your construction stuff until you widen it for the people. I don't think it has to be, or does it have to be widened and stuff to start using that road for building the park? I mean, you want that road completed and widened and paved. It will be done to county standards, as someone has pointed out. I don't think I misunderstood that until it is brought into the city. But isn't that road perfectly good to use for all the construction type of items, vehicles that have to go through? That seems less destructive than using LWA, but that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I noticed Councilor Goebel, you still have your hand up, do you? Okay, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to get an answer to Councilmember Munz's question, because my understanding is obviously Gun Club would need to be improved eventually, but it was kind of my understanding that we couldn't do anything until it had construction-wise, until it had been widened, etc. So I want to make sure I'm clear on that. But I also wanted to know, I can't remember who mentioned, getting direction from council on how to proceed. Council has already issued a directive to proceed with phase 1 via Gun Club Road. So, I mean, do we need to reiterate that, or do we need to issue something new, or would we just be proceeding as previously planned? So if you need a motion or something, please let us know. But since those are the instructions from council as they already exist, I'm not sure if we need to restate that today or not. So just let us know what you need from us to proceed. Thank you.
Mr. Olborn.
Mayor, I'm just trying to wrap this up. I think, Alex, this was a good opportunity for us to kind of bring you the new information we have with the traffic study. And so certainly after reviewing that, if council appears to be still doesn't think there's a lot of negatives with that from that study and still from a policy decision wants to proceed with the Gun Club Road, then staff will go accordingly, and we appreciate the input from council, and we'll go ahead and proceed accordingly. I guess, Alex, I'm looking at you if you need any other input from council to know what direction to go.
No, the message is very clear. Thank you.
Okay, so nothing else needed at this point. That's the direction we'll go. Anyone else? I see Councilor Heisen. Do you just have your hand up?
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Trying to keep my eye open for those. Okay, well, thank you. Good discussions there, and we will now move on to senior services, senior center roof replacement. And I believe we have our central services. Who do we have? Sandra Place again here for that, or Liz Lang? Who do we have? Sandra.
Hi, Mayor. You have both of us. We're tag teaming this. I'm just
Good,
going to
okay.
start us off here. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We're here to give a quick update on our roof replacement project. And so, as we've shared before, it's an original roof to the building, 32 years old. It's been patched several times to extend its life. We did get the capital budgeted for 2021 to get this new roof put on, and you can see what the estimated amount was going to be. Well, at the beginning of this year, when we went out to bid for it, we all learned pretty quickly of the incredible increase in construction costs. So we're coming to you today to give you an update on what we found about the roof itself in another inspection report, and also where we're at with what the cost for the roof replacement is looking at right now, and what we're doing as staff to come up with options to move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sandra Place, our Central Services Supervisor, to take us through the inspection of the roof and the funding.
Thank you, Liz. If you don't mind driving here. So this picture here shows the two pieces of the senior center roof. The pink is the shingle part, and the yellow will be the low slope roof. And we'll be talking about those pieces of this project. Next slide, please. So we had a courtesy inspection come out, and they were very helpful in determining what needed to be done. And they took these pictures for us and showed the deterioration of the shingled roof, which is a 2-layer roof. Next slide, please. This one is the low slope roof, and multiple things have happened to this roof. Those drains are actually a good thing if they were working properly. They're not working properly because the HVAC unit was modified, and those metal braces are now actually stopping the flow of the low slope roof. And so we're experiencing puddling, and that's actually been eating away at what they call the membrane of that roof. Next slide, please. So we utilized the Omnia Partners, which used to be called it's a purchasing co-op that we use, but they've now combined a couple of them together, and they're called the Omnia. So U.S. Communities, I think you've heard before, as well as TCPN. They have the Garland Company, which is a project management team that helped us out with this. The 3 bids that came back in, those are the 3 vendors. And next slide. And as Liz said, when they came back in, we were quite shocked at how large the total came in. So the first option there, number 1, is replacing both of those, the pink and the yellow. So that came in at the $227,000. We asked them to split those out so we could see what the 2 pieces would come, what the amounts of those were. And so the shingle roof came in at $81,000. The third option was just doing this low the low slope roof at 123,000. And then we also have an option of restoring the roof, waiting until the pricing potentially will go back down if the construction market goes back down. So we have quite a few options that we looked at. Next slide. So due to this high expected cost, we got together as a team and we decided that maybe we should do some extra work and due diligence to make sure that there isn't any other bids that would come out lower. So what we've decided to do is we put together a bid package that went out to MRC roster vendors. And we're hoping that when those come back in, that they're going to be lower than what came off of this co-op purchasing. And so we're in that process right now. So we just wanted to update council because you'll be seeing this before another workshop be brought forward to city council with some procurement options, whether it be replacing the whole roof, one piece of the roof this year, waiting until the next budget cycle, or repairing it. We'll just present council with some viable options. And at this time, we open up for questions.
Okay, so turn to the council, not seeing hands at this point. Okay. Thank you, Sandra, and thank you, Liz. We will move on to our last item, administration, city administrators report. Mr. Olborn.
All right, thank you, Mayor. First, to start off, to give a formal introduction to our new Parks Operation Manager, Don Crawford, who started on Wednesday of last week. And so we already got his expertise. Thank you, Don. And he's integrating really quickly into the system. And he's familiar to two of the council members who served on the selection committee. So I thank Council Member Wazinger and Council Member Goebel helping us through the hiring process. And welcome, Don. Comes with a lot of experience and already was able to field a question on turf and such. So certainly we really appreciate it. And certainly council members, you're welcome to interact with him and introduce yourselves as he integrates into this area here. And he'll play a more active role in the Harbor Heights discussions here, and specifically when we start getting into the fields and such. So he has a lot of expertise and will help us with this development here. So I welcome him and thank him for his efforts and coming to Oak Harbor and working with us. So thank you, Don. Kind of moving on to two other items I have on the I want to focus on out of the lot of information on the pages here is the American Rescue Plan. Certainly we were waiting for a lot of information on that, and it looks like we're finally starting to get enough details, and our finance director, Dave Goldman, has done a good job of gleaming all the information coming out as it comes out. So our plan is to provide you a comprehensive update on the June 30th workshop to go over that. And by that time, we should have a wealth of information to kind of give us some criteria of how we spend the $4 to $5 million we expect to get through the American Rescue Plan. So, and then lastly, in the development side, more good news with the Howard's Point subdivision, another 9 homes under the report there on page 351 for residential new construction. So with that, those are the 3 items I have to cover. I'll just take any questions council may have.
Okay, not seeing any questions at this point. So I think that concludes our business for today. I want to thank you very much for your work and your time, City Council, staff. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. It's not a question, but I'm getting my stick out and I'm telling the council members, please get in and sign those vouchers. They need to pay the bills. They're in the orange thing. And for a rare cause, I mean, Jeff Mack has beaten me several times. He's been the first one, but there's still some vouchers. So please, when you go in, at least try to go once a week and sign those, because that really helps our staff. And that's a little thing that we can do. So thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Great to have that help. Thanks. Okay, seeing no further business, then we will adjourn this workshop. Thank you all.